Yes, hello, that's right. It's Joe here for Joyrider TV, coming to you live from Studio 4, I think we're calling this one, in Vasiliki on the Greek island of Lefkos. And yes, we're going to be looking at more of your catamaran sailing problems and seeing what we can do to solve those problems so that they are less of a problem. Oh yes, indeed. So quite eventful week this week for Joyrider TV. In fact, when Joyrider TV has just become a sponsor of the International Hobie Class Association, which is really quite massive because this is the association that is responsible for all of the Hobie sailing events that go on worldwide. So I'm going to be making some content for the Hobie Cat Association. So if you are a Hobie sailor, I'd certainly recommend getting involved and looking into joining your local Hobie Class Association, because now I'm involved too. So let's make it special, shall we? Hold on, can we do this? No, we can't. Okay. Also exciting news this week is just yesterday or the day before, the dates and venues were released for the Tornado Class Association events for 2023. And I am absolutely delighted because the World Championships are going to be held at Lake Como, Italy, which is a really, really nice place to go sailing. So I'm definitely going to do what I can to make sure I am attending that event with Bad Boy 94. Incidentally, that event is kind of mid-August. So there you go. If you've got a tornado and you fancy getting your toes wet, then August, Lake Como, World Championships, everybody's invited. Oh, yes. What else? We'll say hello to everyone who's saying hello. Bit of a slow start today, but hello to Mason in Virginia, USA. Great to have you on board. Hello to Max in Rosenheim, Bavaria, Germany. Nice to have you with us, Max. So you may have seen that, or you may not have seen, yesterday I put out a what went wrong video, and I just thought we could start off this Q&A just by going a little bit deeper into what was going wrong in the what went wrong video. And there was some common themes that were going on, and these what went wrong videos are generally based on high wind sailing, because they usually end up with several big capsizes. And there was some themes of the same thing going wrong for many different people. So the first one was the just general capsizing when you're going along. And there's three big things that are issues which are leading. I don't know what I'm going to draw. I'm getting a pen ready just in case. In the capsize or the pitch pole. So with the pitch pole especially, there we go. I'm drawing a boat. I still don't know why I'm drawing that. But in the pitch pole, what could we say is the first and most significant thing that could be going wrong? It would possibly be the trim issue, where the sailors are on the boat. So when you're sailing in a high wind and you're going on a beam reach, so can we draw this here? Yes, we can. So if the wind is there, if we're on a beam reach, or any what we call lower than a beam reach down here. If we're trapezing and going fast, we want to be as far back as we possibly can be on the boat. So that means if we can, when it's windy, if you feel that there's a chance of your nose sticking in, the further you get to the back, these are feet, by the way, there's the back beam just there. The further we can get to the back of the boat, there's the helm, and there's the crew's feet. If we can get right to the back of the boat, we will greatly reduce the risk of sticking the nose in. Now, you may feel that trapezing sort of close to the back beam is enough, but if you can move further back than there, it really is going to help. And by reducing the risk of sticking the nose in, what you're also doing is increasing your ability to push the boat so you could get more speed out of the boat as well, if you want more speed. So that's the first common issue that was going on, is not far enough back. And the second one, and this is massive, this is a very common question. Actually, Mason says, have you ever been too far back? Yeah, I tell you what, say, if you saw the thumbnail of this Q&A, it's a picture of the FX1. And the FX1 is a boat where it does feel sometimes like the boat could do with being a foot longer at the back, because I'll go back and back and back. And because you're doing everything yourself, because it's a single hander with the spinnaker as well, I go to put my foot a bit further back and there's no boat there. Boom. And fortunately, I've never actually stepped off the back in that way. But yes, that would be too far back. But too far back could also be if the wind isn't particularly strong. If you do notice your bows are riding quite high, that would be too far back. Or back to this point of sail diagram, even if it's windy, if you're sailing more on a close reach, or certainly on an upwind point of sail, because on these points of sail here, the wind to a certain degree is pushing backwards on the rig, lifting the bows. So if you're right at the back, you might start getting quite high bows there. So yeah, so it is possible to go too far back, but if you're worried about sticking the nose in, getting further back is always going to help. Okay, so the second one, and this is a big one as well. So we're now looking at our boat from above. In fact, we could have done this for getting further back as well, of course. But now, the traveller position. This really changes your high wind sailing experience massively. If your traveller's in too central, when it's windy, then you're just making life so much harder for yourself. But not only that, you are making it more likely that you're going to stick the nose in or capsize. So if you're sailing with the traveller central and a load of main sheet eased, which, you know, has a similar effect to letting the traveller out, but if you've got a load of main sheet eased, if you don't have much main sheet tension, then what's going to happen is the mainsail at the top, this is the mast, so this is the mainsail at the top. It's going to be really open like this at the top. And then as we come further down, it's going to be closer in, if you understand where I'm coming from with this diagram. And because the sail is so open at the top, when you don't have much sheet tension on, it means that the pressure in that part of the sail is really pushing forwards. And imagine that that part of the sail is really high up. So that is a lot of force pushing forwards at high up. And what's that going to do? That is going to try to stick your leeward bow at least, or maybe even both bows, under the water. So that is the first problem with having the Traveller too central and not enough tension in the main sheet. The second thing with having the Traveller too central is it means that to keep the boat under control, you have to work with a tremendous amount of sheet as well. So in every gust, you might have to actually release twice as much sheet as you would than if you had the Traveller eased and you were sailing with a much tighter sheet. The third issue with having the Traveller central when it's windy and the sheet loose is when you've got no tension. So this is the top of the sail. This would be the leech of the sail here. And then there is the boom, or the bottom of the sail. By having very little tension in the back edge of the sail, it means we're not really controlling the sail, and the sail is just almost going to be like fluid, where as it fills with pressure, it's just going to change shape. It's going to be very unstable, and we're going to be all over the shop. Yeah, I'll just let that sink in for a minute while I say hello to some people. Hello, Chris from Frozen, Texas. Wow, 18 degrees F this morning. Now, that is colder than I thought that Texas would have been. Mason says 42 degrees in Virginia, F. We're dealing in F. Hello to Scott. Scott says also hello to the Joyrider community. Thanks, Scott. Hello to Hans in rainy Germany. Nice to have you with us, Hans. All right. And hello to Matthew, who says if you ease Traveller and keep the sheet tight, you remain a faster sail shape, just a little bit less height. We'll come on to that in a minute, actually. That's another question I've got lined up. But yeah, so number one problem with Traveller central, no tension in the main sheet, is the top of the sail trying to force the bows in. Second problem is that you're having to work with more sheet. Third problem is you don't really have much control over the main sail at all. And problem number 4 is it's just not a particularly good sail shape anyway. There are, of course, degrees of letting the Traveller out and how much sheet tension you want to put on. Like, you could ease the Traveller like a foot or so and sheet the main sheet in as much as you can from that position, which might, on certain points of sail, work very nicely. But what I would try to do is ease the Traveller enough when we're going for this sort of speed sailing. When you've got it eased enough, it means that in the lull, when the wind goes to its lowest, your main sheet is going as tight as it possibly will go. And then as the gusts increase, then you'll ease it out more. And that way, you'll be able to sail more consistently, quicker, with less chance of sticking the nose in. And you'll have much, much more control. That's what I would say. So this was a common theme in yesterday's What Went Wrong video. The other one, which is much less significant, but it also adds to it, is having the jib in too tight. When you're beam reaching, the jib too tight is really going to try to drive the bows down. So make sure that your jib is not in too tight when you are sending it. the crew does have an active role. And then if you are sailing single-handed, which we addressed in the video as well, and you haven't got enough hands to be changing the jib particularly often, then have the jib a little bit looser than what is perfect. So if it means the front part of the jib is just flapping slightly, if it's really windy and you feel like you've got a bit on, then have the front part of the jib flapping slightly. So that means that the jib is not going to capsize you. I think probably at least 60% of my capsizes when I'm sailing single-handed are because the jib is on too much. In fact, I'd say probably 60% of my capsizes generally are because the jib is in too tight. There we go. All right, just saying hello to everyone else who's saying hello. We've got Cole on board in sunny San Diego. Just narrowly escaped -15 in Colorado. Wow, that is chilly. And morning to Ryan in Maui. We saw Ryan swimming twice in yesterday's What Went Wrong video. So thanks again for the footage there, Ryan. Not only really good footage, but it just looks like such an amazing place to go sailing as well. Very nice indeed. We're actually talking about the What Went Wrong video and some common themes just now. So the traveller being the big issue. So if you haven't tried sailing in a strong wind with the traveller out, except for sailing downwind perhaps, definitely try it. Just try letting it out and seeing how much easier it is. The one thing especially on the more modern design boats, which can become, I'd call it, a slight annoyance when you let the traveller out on like a beam reaching course, is sometimes when you pull the main sheet in, the traveller moves up towards the centre as well. And I'm trying to come up with some sort of solution to this, because it is quite irritating that some of your energy of sheeting in is being wasted by the traveller moving when you don't really want the traveller to be moving. So, oh, hello to Mr. Tony KP in dark Denmark. Yeah, I've seen there is a significant amount of snow in Denmark at the moment. I hope you're doing well there. Okay, yeah, so then I wasn't expecting to see quite so much of this in yesterday's What Went Wrong video, but there was these two jibes, one from Greg and Laura, which they saved, and then one from Ryan, which was not saved. And both were very similar for what was happening. And like I said in the video, if you haven't seen the video, you can check it out afterwards, well, I'll say what happened first. If this is the boat, they were going through the jibe like this, so much mainsail out that the boat was almost capsizing the wrong way, like that, as they went through the jibe. And what's happening here, I'm going to exaggerate it in the picture, but on both of these jibes, there was so much slack in the main sheet that if we draw the top of the sail, let's really exaggerate what was happening. And it was actually out so far that if you think this is like in a laser, so here's going to be a small picture of a laser. When they sail downwind, they have the sail out further than 90 degrees. And this is called sailing by the lee. It actually means that we're sailing on the other tack. So the wind is coming from this side Can we see that? Yes. But the sail is still out on the left side of the boat, even though the wind is coming from the left, because we've let the sail out so far. Now, in a laser, this is a really unstable way to sail the boat. It's very fast, but it's very unstable, and it's very easy to capsize because the force in the sail, as you can see, is trying to capsize the boat that way, which actually means you could pretty much, and we've seen videos of it on like Instagram and stuff, people hiking out on the wrong side of the boat while they're sailing by the lee. Crazy. So much skill involved there. But with these jibes that we looked at yesterday, a similar thing was going on, with the sail being eased so much that even though we're still sat on this side of the boat, ready to go into our jibe, the pressure in the sail is actually pulling the windward bow down. So as we bear away, then this is the second thing that's happening with these jibes when we've got the sail going so far out is, all right, let's say that already we're sailing straight downwind here. Now, how far are we going to have to turn through the wind before the wind is going to get on the other side of the sail to allow it to come across? Yes, you're right, a long way. And by the time we've sailed that far down, we're going to have lost all of our speed, which means when we're losing the speed going into a jibe, that's when the pressure is going to load up in the rig, and that is going to make for a much more violent jibe. But the way that we're kind of surviving when we're sailing downwind in the first place is by sailing as fast as possible. That is how we're making the boat feel more settled, and that is how we are able to sail the boat downwind in strong winds, is by sailing as fast as possible. All right, we may have mentioned this before, but we're going to mention it again now. All right, let's put the wind in the right direction. So wind coming from the top, and we're sailing downwind nicely. All right. So in this situation, if we are sailing at 10 knots and the wind is 20 knots, then that means, this is very loose maths, there is no science involved in this maths at all. But if the wind is 20 knots, we're sailing at 10 knots, that means we've got 10 knots of pressure like this trying to push us over. Whereas if we're sailing as fast as possible, so let's rev it up to 15 knots, then we've got 5 knots of pressure which is trying to capsize us, and the rest of what's going on is helping us to go faster. So that is why when we're going into a jibe, we're trying to carry the speed through the jibe, taking the pressure out of the rig, and in the same way, we're trying to get the sail to come across as early as possible in the jibe, because as early as possible is when we're going to have the most speed on. So two things that I would do is, if you've been sailing with the Traveller out all the way, let's say, I would bring it into the tow strap before the jibe, and then as you go into the jibe, we're going to grab what's called the falls of the main sheet. Now, what we're calling the falls of the main sheet is if we've got our blocks and then we've got the ropes running up and down here. We're going to grab hold here, right in the middle. And by doing that, what we can do is we can grab it, pull it, which tightens up the back edge of the sail, brings it closer to the center line, and actually means that you'll get the sail to go across that little bit sooner. And that means that you're getting the sail to go across while you're sailing faster. There we go. There's a lot of info there. I'll just let you take that in for a second. All right, who else have we got tuning in? We have got Cux Ollie from Northern Germany. Great to have you on board, Cux Ollie. And thanks for hitting the like button. If anybody else has got a spare finger, please feel free to hit the like button. It all helps. What it helps actually is for more people to have this video shown to them, so more people can benefit from all this great information that is coming. We've got Chip on board from San Diego as well. That's Chip from Whirlwind Sales, of course, I was lucky enough to meet Chip here in Vasiliki earlier on this year, and what a pleasure that was. I think we could have talked for several hours about catamaran sailing and Hobie cat history and sail making and all sorts of stuff. Great to have you on board, Chip. Hope it's going well in San Diego. Cool. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much, those were the two big points from the What Went Wrong video yesterday. But if you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it. Make sure you hit the like button, give it a share, all that sort of thing, because it's a great video. You know, I'm really pleased with how it came out. But the reason that it came out so well is because of the footage that was sent in. So there we go. So check that out. We've got Aaron on board in New Zealand, probably some point very early in the morning or very late at night. Thanks for joining us, Aaron. Great to have you on board. All right, question from Ryan, who says, what about split tail traveller line? This is a good question. One, in fact, a rarity in these parts, because it's a question that hasn't been asked yet in the Q&A. So you may be thinking, what on earth is a split tail traveller line? All right, we'll do a close up. So if this is the back beam, this would be like the fair lead where our normal traveller line ties off. It would go through there and ties off. And then we're just going to draw the traveller car at a slightly funny angle, but it's just so you can see what's going on. So the traveller car would generally have some sort of roller going both ways. It looks like a face. And then on the rollers, you'd have the bit where your main sheet attaches. And then the traveller car is kind of like that. Now, a standard traveller line, as I'm sure most of you would have seen, is a rope that comes through the two rollers there and then goes through the fair lead on the back beam and ties off there. Now, the reason the split tail traveller line exists, well, let's explain what it is first. So the regular traveller line, let's draw it in blue, goes like that, figure of 8 knot, and we are done. Nice. And then the split tail traveller line, what we would have for that is equal distances on the back beam. We would have fair leads here, probably about, what would they be? let's say about each one about a foot from the center. And then, so this is our alternative traveller line. Again, it would come through here, but at this point, and this is when the traveller is pulled as tight as it will go, it splits into two lines. So one line goes this way and one line goes this way. So the rope is actually going to be spliced, single rope to two ropes. You can actually buy rope, which if this is our piece of rope, most rope would have an outer and then a core like this inside, but you can get rope which you have the outer and then you actually have two cores, and that rope is made especially for doing this sort of thing. Now, you may be wondering, what on earth is the point of having a split tail traveller line? Well, the point of it is when you've got it adjusted correctly, and that is so the two lines go through the rollers and then the single line goes in the cleat, it means that when you've got it pulled in tight, there is absolutely zero movement in the traveller car, which means it will stay absolutely locked in the middle when you want it to be locked in the middle. When would you want it to be locked in the middle? It would be when you're sailing upwind, and I would say the only time you'd really notice a difference is if you're racing in a very competitive fleet. So the split tail traveller line was originally invented in the Tornado class when the Tornado was being raced in the Olympics, obviously at the highest level, and everyone was doing what they could. There was some very scientific thought. How can we make the boat more efficient and get more out of the boat? Okay, I've noticed that the traveller car moves about a centimetre when we're going upwind. Let's get rid of that movement so it's really bolted in the middle. Split traveller line. Probably in the A class as well, where it's very scientific, very accurate sailing. And then this technology got passed down into the F-18 and F-16 sailing fleets. I don't know which other fleets use this as standard, but that would be the reason to do a split tail traveller. I would say if you're sailing recreationally and not racing at a fairly high level, I wouldn't worry about doing the split tail traveller. Why wouldn't I worry about it? It is because the amount of faff it involves when you're rigging your boat. It's always nice to take as many of the ropes off the boat as you can when you've finished. Give them a dunk in a bucket, get rid of all the salt and stuff. Now, setting up your split tail traveller, it's not a quick procedure because you have to have it absolutely centered. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So I personally wouldn't worry about it unless I was racing at a fairly high level. If you are going to do it, I would definitely consider having a separate traveller line which ties to the end of the main sheet, and then you leave that line on your boat all of the time rather than having to redo it each time. But generally, the regular style traveller line, if you pull it in tight, you won't get more than a centimetre or two of movement, and that is fine. Just checking in with, so I hope that's a good answer for you, Ryan. I'd say don't bother, personally. A lot of our Tigers, we buy all our Hobie Tigers secondhand because you can't buy new ones anymore. and a lot of them come with the split tail travelers already fitted, and we basically we replace the ropes. We don't use the split tail traveler because the difference that it makes for us here is next to nothing. It's not a difference that would be noticed. So there we go. Just checking in with Thomas. Cebu, hi, how you doing? Wish you and your family very nice Christmas. Thank you very much. And also the crew from Cavadeus and Melas hotels at Wildwind. Thanks very much for that, Thomas. I'll pass that on. Great to hear from you. Have a nice Christmas in Germany. Got Ollie Smith in. Don't know where Ollie Smith is at the moment, but he's one of the main guys from the Wildwind Beach. Happy Christmas to you too, Ollie. Thanks for checking in. And yeah, next season is, oh, he's in the pub. Yeah, good choice. Obviously, some scintillating repartee in the pub at the moment, so that you had to tune in to the Q&A. But hello to everyone else who's in the pub as well at this time. Probably not anybody in America. I wouldn't have thought it's a bit early for the pub just now. Anyway, we're just going to take a short commercial break for everyone watching later. And we're back. Okay, so I've actually only got one preloaded question to look at this week. And that comes from, hold on, let me just check. It comes from NZ Aviator, who I'm guessing is an aviator from New Zealand, who says, I'm really struggling to get my Hobie 16 to point when sailing upwind. If I go closer than about 60 degrees to the wind, then the boat pretty much stops. Okay, this is an issue. So there's a few things that we can do which could help. So let's just look at how we would set the boat up. What we want to do is when the boat is on the land, we can set it up. So we'll get the sails up. Now, one thing that can make a big difference, I'm going to draw a boat. Seems to be what I do here. Not my best boat I've drawn. I think looks more like a shoe in certain places. We want to make sure the mainsail is definitely at the top. Very important. So when we've pulled the sail up, the next thing we want to do is we're going to put the jib up. And just to simplify, when we're putting the jib up, let's put on a reasonable amount of rig tension. Because, right, how do we know if we don't have enough rig tension on? So, if you didn't know, on a Hobie 16, the rig tension is all coming from the jib halyard tension. So this would run outside the mast and come to about here. We want to pull the jib halyard on pretty hard. In all conditions, we want to have that jib halyard pretty tight. If the jib halyard isn't tight enough, what will happen is you'll be able to pull the main sheet in very tight so that the blocks are actually touching without much effort. So if you can pull the main sheet in so the blocks touch and it doesn't take much effort, it means that your jib halyard is not tight enough. Or if the jib halyard is really tight, it means that the mast is too far back, which means we need to adjust the shrouds on the adjusters here, we need to bring them up a hole, maybe up 2 holes, so that the mast isn't as far back. Number 1. Number 2, if you've done all that and you still feel that when you sheet the mainsail in, the mast comes back really easily and you can get the 2 blocks touching too easily, then perhaps it might actually be that your jib halyard rope isn't of a high enough quality. If you're using a low quality rope for your jib halyard, like maybe you've got a 5mm rope with a polyester core, that rope is going to stretch very easily, which means that when you sheet in your mainsail, all that you're doing is you're pulling the mast backwards. You're not actually putting any tension into the leech of the mainsail. One of the ingredients that helps us to sail upwind is by having tension in the leech of the mainsail, because that helps to drive the boat upwind. So if you have got a 5mm or smaller jib halyard, then just put a load of rig tension on and just get a feel for, do you think that bad boy's stretching when you sheet in? If it is, that's not going to help. All right, so that is what I would say are setup points. When it gets windy, yes, we want to ease off the jib halyard, but we're just talking about getting the boat sailing upwind full stop to start with. The next thing, it could be down to your rudder setup. So with the rudders, we want to make sure that the rudder blades are tucked into the boat this way as much as they can. So if we've got the rudder stock, if we look down the rudder stock, and that if we were looking from the bottom, let's say, that is what the rudder stock would look like. There's the hole for the rudder pin. We'd want to make sure that the rudder blade, so here's the rudder blade going in, we want to make sure that the rudder blade comes in all the way to the rudder stock. And if you were to grab the rudder blade with your hand on land, pull it backwards, no space appears between the rudder blade and the rudder stock just here. So that stays tight in there. If the rudder blade is able to go backwards, what that's going to do is it's going to put loads of load on the rudders, and that is going to really reduce your ability to sail upwind. Okay, and then if everything is set up, all we need to do is get the sails in and gently ease the boat up towards the wind. So the way that we should be looking at the boat, let's say it's not overpowered conditions, then on the jib, what shape is the jib? Right, on the jib, you need to have some telltales. All right, so a close-up of the telltales. What we're doing with, so firstly, we're going to pull the jib in tight. This may seem like really basic stuff, but I think hitting the basics is a good place to start. So if we say that the red one is on the other side, the blue one is on this side as we look at it. So the red one we can see through the sail. So what we want to make sure is the red telltale is always flying straight back like this. If at any time the red telltale is lifting or is not flying straight back, it means we're not sailing close enough to the wind. So we can just allow the boat to turn up a bit to the wind until that outside telltale starts flying straight back. Lovely. All right. So if when you sail up towards the wind to get that outside telltale flying straight back, if the boat appears to stop, then chances are it might be that your main sheet is in the wrong position. So if in doubt, always let the sail out first a bit, because chances are, if you're really trying to sail upwind and the boat is stopping dead, you might be oversheeted. So just ease the mainsail out a little bit, see how that feels. Right, at this point, I'd just like to say goodbye to Chip and Happy Christmas, and goodbye to Chris and Merry Christmas. Thanks for tuning in for a bit. Hope you have a great weekend. Plenty of turkey. I don't know if you have Brussels sprouts in America, but if you don't, then you should, because it's important for Christmas. One of the top 2 important things at Christmas, one is Brussels sprouts. Anyway, back to the jib telltales. So make sure that the outside jib telltale is flying at all times, because that is what's going to tell you that you are sailing close enough to the wind. Then if the inside one starts to lift, if the wind's light, this means we are sailing a bit too close to the wind. So if the wind's light, just take it back off the wind a little bit until she's flying straight back. And there we are. That is the sweet spot. That is where we want it. As the wind increases more, we are actually going to sail so the inside telltale is lifting, because by sailing really high, that's the only way that we can actually get upwind as it gets more breeze there. The only other thing we can look at is what your position is on the boat. So if we look from above, so just some other simple things. If, let's say, if the wind is less than 10 knots, we're going to have the travellers, mainsail traveller, jib traveller, all the way to the inside, pulled in tight there. And then our crew positions, we want to get reasonably far forwards. I would say if you're not getting any closer than 60 degrees to the wind, you don't have to go all out to be as efficient as possible, but the sort of zone where we want to be is here. This is where we should be positioned. Anywhere in this area for sailing upwind. If you're back here at all, should have done that here really, say don't go there. If we're back here, this is a big no-no, not there, not there. Let's keep it here. And then we should be able to get the boat going upwind. So NZ Aviator, I think it was, who asked the question. Yes, try that out. Or if you already are doing that and it's still not working, let me know and we'll see what else we can come up with. There we go. So also, we've got online, we've got Robert who says sprouts and pumpkin pie. Wowzers. Yeah, pumpkin's not so big here, really so much, but yeah, I'll try it. All right, back to the split traveller on the Nacra 500, in fact, but apparently the Nacra 500 calls for a split traveller line in the manual, but just because it's in the manual doesn't mean you've got to do it. You could just put, if it hasn't got one already, a central fair lead on the back beam. It's a lot less hassle, a lot more straightforward. But what it I know probably all Nacras say you should have a split traveller line, because Nacra are definitely one of the trendsetters who are probably responsible for why a lot of the F-18s, at least, are using split traveller lines. There we go. We've got Wise Brand D. Merry Christmas. Even though I've never sailed a cat, you are my favourite sailing channel. Yes, thank you very much. And great to have you with us on this Christmas Eve. Yeah, so there we go. That is all that I've got in the preloaded bank for this week. And thanks very much to everybody for tuning in. Thanks to everybody for their continued support. Thanks to Robert for coming in with another question. Robert says, have you ever done any distance cat sailing? Island to island, maybe. I've never done anything that I'd consider to be really long distance. Probably the longest distance, just have to think about this for a second. Yeah, probably the longest distance I've ever done was I sailed in the Round Texel race, which is one of the biggest catamaran. Well, it used to be the biggest catamaran sailing race in the world, where they used to get 700 boats on one start line. Texel is the first island off the north of Holland, and the race is 100. I think it's 100 kilometers, and that's quite a long way to go, I thought, in one go. Fortunately, when I participated in that event, it was windy, and we did it in 3 hours and 1 minute, which was pretty quick. But that, I think, is the furthest distance I've ever sailed in one go. I can't think of another time when I sailed any further than that. Yeah, but I've sailed to the other islands here, but they're not actually that far, usually about 20, 30 kilometers at the most. But something I would like to do more of. Thanks for that, Robert. Considering a fundraising coastal sail, East Coast USA. Nice. Yeah, I think that would be really great. And I think you could definitely, I dare say you're doing it already, but take the Worrell 1000 as a starting point of how that works out, and use that as a template for what you want to do. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. If I'm in the area, I'd like to get involved, of course. But right now, it's time for me to go, because it's Christmas Eve, and there's some sort of beverages that need to be consumed. Don't forget the cheese this Christmas. Very important. Cheese, Brussels sprouts, and all of the other stuff. And have a lovely weekend, everybody. And I will be back next Friday. Hopefully, you're not going to believe this, but from the brand new Joyrider TV studios. Yes, I've moved house. I'm currently in the construction process of a new facility. We've just got new internet fitted there today, and it is doing well. It's registering at about 28 on the download, which I believe is pretty good. So thanks again for everybody's continued support. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks to everyone for hitting the like button. And I'll see you soon with some more on Joyrider TV. Oh, yes. And happy Christmas, everyone. Stay safe and healthy. And to you too, Max. Thanks very much.